All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to my channel. This is Rob here at Smirking Reviews. And your eyes do not deceive you. I still am alive and I am making content right now with some friends, hoping that maybe this will knock some cobwebs loose, give me some motivation to get out there and talk about stuff. And we're here to talk about 2021 and what it was like entertainment wise, and talking about stuff that we didn't talk about on our respective channels, um, or things that we just wanted to talk about and just kind of have a good conversation here this Saturday night. So first of all, though, we have to introduce everybody, and right over here, the newest member of this kind of like group that we've had going on for a couple of years is Alyssa from Alyssa Jean Reviews. Thanks for being here. How are you doing?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Rob. Well, I've been doing these with Marc for a very long time, but just not, and with Darren, but not necessarily with you and the whole group together. But it's good to have the whole gang together, so it's good to be here.
Yes, don't forget to go to everybody's channels. Alyssa Jean Reviews. Marc's here with the Champion of Eternity. Make sure to go to his channel. And of course, I would not be here right now, probably still doing this, if it wasn't for this guy down here, Mr. Darren Jakes. Say hi, Darren.
Hi, Rob. Thanks so much. Very kind of you. Yeah, excited to kind of look back here and see how the ups and downs of this past year, or at least let's see if we can find some fun out of what we all went through.
Yeah, we're not talking about Boba Fett today, so
Nope.
we're already winning. So, and then last but not least, in the corner over here, I'm not exactly sure how this would have worked with 5 people. We were supposed to have 5, but we might still have. They might pop in. Maybe there'll be a center person there. I don't know. But we are talking also about Marc from Enchantment of Eternity, who also has been kind enough to show up to my channel to talk about pop culture today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Rob. Always great to be here. I'm looking forward to take a look back. Yep, there it is. Okay, so now we can talk about some movies. Let's get to it.
Kevin Nealon joke.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, I know too well.
All right, so for a lot of people, we've picked out some topics, and we also are going to have a best in Marvel topic where everybody's going to say what they think is their top best, top of the heap Marvel property, product, movie, film, TV show, what have you. It was a really interesting think up. I at first kind of thought, how is that going to work? Is everybody going to because I think that it's a hard question. It's a really hard question. When we get to it, I think it'll be fun hearing everybody's answers. But first, we're going to talk about something that I think I have to know what other people think of it, because I'm still confused on my feelings about it, which is Spider-Man No Way Home. I've seen it twice. The first time I walked out of there and I kind of felt a little shell-shocked, because it was a lot to take in for a first viewing. I felt really overwhelmed, and I kind of didn't know what had happened. And so I went back like a couple of days later with my nephew, and we watched it again. And I still don't know how I feel about it, because part of me feels like I just saw the greatest thing in the world. And there's another part of me that just goes, yeah, but like, why was this? What I just kind of like, what was going on in this movie that I like care about after it's over? And I have some feelings about like a lot of the things that were going on that made me go, is this the end for Spider-Man in the MCU? Was this a kind of a goodbye in a way to prepare us for Sony taking over? Not goodbye to Tom Holland Spider-Man, who I think he's going to take a break, but is this, a way for them to have an out? where then Sony can once again eventually run Spider-Man straight into the side of a building because he ran out of web fluid. So I'm really curious to hear what everybody else thinks about it. And since he's the one who saw it the most recent, I'm going to go down here with Darren and ask him, what did you think of Spider-Man No Way Home? Because I would really love to hear what you have to say about it.
Yeah, it was kind of an interesting journey. Here in LA, we've got some pretty heavy caseloads and stuff. So I was trying to wait for a quiet matinee where nobody else was in the theater. And luckily I was finally able to get a nice showing, and it was an interesting kind of evolution, I think, watching the show, because when it starts off, you're like, okay, right back where we started. Okay, we're kind of having fun. Oh, there's a little Matt Murdock. That's kind of spoilers, by the way, everyone. Spoiler alerts.
There's no way to talk about this without spoilers, so
yeah.
I hope we're getting into spoilers.
just so nobody gives us crap later on.
Like really heavy spoilers.
Yeah. And we get the Matt Murdock, which was kind of fun, and we get some ideas of what this life would be like. But even getting into the even final adventure, I was like, how do I feel about this? Where are we going? Is this just a goofy romp? I wasn't really feeling the big emotional tug. There wasn't any like grab. And yet, God, I got to say, as the story went on, I got more into it. Then it got emotional. Then we're seeing all these different people, and I'm getting the flashbacks from the old movies. They're pulling up the nostalgia bit. And then when we get the 3 Spider-Men show up, it's like, man, I'm feeling it. By the end, I'm like, I'm emotional. We get some redemption from the individual Spider-Man and Tom Holland as a whole. We get the passing of the great power comes great responsibility. And I think done in an interesting way. I like how they've kind of worked that even Tom's Spider-Man is an alternate universe. Everybody has a little alternate universe story from the main classical Spider-Man. And the fact that we kind of went into that idea, I got to say, by the end of it, I was emotional. I was excited. Did they lean heavily on nostalgia and the fact that we have been watching these movies with these actors? And was that really what it was all about? Ultimately, I think so. Was it the chance for Sony to kind of take this on its own direction away from the MCU? This gave them the out to do it. With the amount of money they've made, obviously they have decided that, maybe they can do some more things together going forward. But to me, honestly, my favorite thing to come out of this movie is the fact that finally nobody knows who Spider-Man is. And that was something that's always bothered me with the Tom Holland stuff. It's like everybody knows who Spider-Man is. And that was always one of Spider-Man's things, is he understood that nobody could know. I mean, eventually you got Mary Jane and some people did, but that was always a big thing. And I think there's so much more to do with the character now, keeping that identity hidden and to give him a reason why he has to keep it hidden. And he can't tell anybody, ultimately. So I enjoyed it. Did it definitely rely on a lot of the post-Sony things? Yes. Hopefully this kind of keeps Tom Holland Spider-Man around the MCU. And if they want to take and do some Amazing Spider-Man 3 and give some alternate universe Garfield Spider-Man version story, okay, I would be up for that. They do it with Batman all the time. And maybe that would allow Spider-Man to really develop through the MCU without having to be leaned on to make a new picture every 2 years so it can feed the Sony beast.
All right. Sorry, I was trying to get the stupid mic unmuted. No, that you bring up that putting it like that, it's kind of making me think about how I wonder how much of what I feel about this is how I feel about feeling like it's gonna start being more in Sony's hands, and so I'm getting angry because I'm watching them try to what felt like to me, which was try to make up for things that happened in the past. And the second time I saw it, I was like, yes, I'm all for like what they're doing. I still just didn't know quite like why. And I feel like it's maybe we're not supposed to know the 100% why, because now they can take it in all sorts of directions, but putting it like a lot with his identity too. I do agree. I just felt like, was that their way of saying goodbye for like, was it just so that they could go back to the anonymity, or was it so that they could separate from the MCU? Or maybe it's both. Maybe the options are there to do either.
Well, I
Down
think
the
the
road.
original.
But you were saying that they made so much money that they will
Yeah.
probably still work together.
Yeah, I think the original plan was this was the end of contract. There was that whole kerfuffle last time that, was it going to be in, were they not? And then they were going to do a final. I think this was their way to kind of pinch off that Spider-Man into the Sonyverse. Yes, I use that idea. I'll use that imagery because of Sony's shit movies. To kind of allow that to go off onto its own thing. I think that was. I think it was like, how can we end this so that if he doesn't come back to the MCU, it makes sense? And if he does, they can start telling a different story. They can shift things around and they can play with different stuff. So I think that was the original intent. I just, the amount of money this thing is made.
Do you have a specific moment from the new movie that's like the thing that you think of most? Like as far as best moments that we were just like, oh, like, yes.
I gotta say, I loved, and we all knew it was coming. I think everybody could predict that this was how that was going to happen. Of seeing Andrew Garfield save MJ, I think it was probably one of my bigger emotional, because I think Andrew sold that moment so perfectly. In that of like that, it was all of it right there. But it was a big build up there, and definitely Toby's just look in Tom's face about don't do it, don't make that step. That was good. But to me, the chance, especially because you get to see that his Spider-Man was the one that stopped pulling his punches. He's the one that kind of fell into that dark of what happens when you lose not only, your Uncle Ben, but also the love of your life. And it's maybe kind of your, to see that and get that little redemption in there. I was really excited about that. I think that's the one that kind of sticks with me the most. The one that seems most consequential outside of the magic fix all, you get at the end.
Yeah, I can't really disagree with that at all. Like that was that moment where you knew, you saw it like as soon as it was going, you were like, oh my gosh, they're gonna give him the character the chance to do that. But it also felt like this was like Andrew's big moment. Like you kind of said, the reason I think we like all those movies, the people who love Spider-Man movies, I think a good amount of them would agree that the major thing that you like it for is the person who's playing Spider-Man and what they bring to it. Because when you see it like this, and there's been plenty of discussion by people way more popular than me about never getting the character right. And I feel like between the three of them, they've all done something that when you really look at the time it came out, they brought a different kind of section of Peter Parker to it. Despite how old Tobey Maguire looked back then, there was a sincerity that Peter Parker has that I felt like Tobey Maguire had. Andrew Garfield brought the quip he brought the guy who is great in the action scenes and understands the humor and understands like the Spider-Man part of the character, maybe a little bit more than the Peter Parker part of the character. And then you have Tom Holland, who I think captures the youthfulness of Peter Parker early in his life and how all those things that he did early on affected things. And he's the most perfect, like people like to say he's the most perfect, but honestly, he's been really good as Peter, but I haven't really seen him be as great as Spider-Man. So they all like have different things about it. And I really like what they did there. Now I know Alyssa and Marc are coming at this movie from different angles. And I'm excited to hear, because I've stayed away from everybody's. I've barely watched any YouTube in the like last month. So I've avoided it when I heard about the division. I'm not looking forward to a fight or anything. I sound like I'm getting ready to watch one, but I'm just really interested in seeing where you both come from. So we'll start with Alyssa. What did you think of it? And then we'll go to Marc.
Well, I'm definitely the most enthusiastic about the film out of the four of us. I absolutely loved it. I would say if you re-ask the Marvel question in like 3 or 4 years, Spider-Man No Way Home could be my answer. I ruled it out just because it's too fresh. Like I can't, that's just cheesy to say something that just came out a month ago. But give it some time to marinate, 3 or 4 years, ask the Marvel question again, and I think that's a possibility. That's how much I fucking love this film so much. And as for the differences, Marc will have his say later, but I think one thing I saw Marc say in his review that I think was the key phrase is, I was never a big fan of Spider-Man, is what Marc said. And I think that's a big difference because I first saw Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends when I was like 7 years old and just like fell completely in love with Spider-Man and then Iceman and Firestar. It's come to find out later, Firestar was totally a made-up character for the show. And then once I started getting into comics a few years later, Spider-Man, it was all about Spider-Man. I had this big chest of comic books on the DC side and the Marvel side. And the DC side, the biggest pile was Batman. I was super into Batman. On the Marvel side, it was all about Spider-Man. So I've been waiting for this. This is the film I've been wanting my whole life, basically. And it does so many things. One of them is redeeming some of those really bad previous movies. I watched all 5 of the Sony Spider-Man films, not including Into the Spider-Verse. I'd seen that one before, but the live action ones. I don't know, 6 or 7 months before No Way Home came out, because by that point I already knew that Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield were going to be in it. I mean, they were pretending like they weren't going to be on it, but it was so obvious that they were going to be in it. So I figured I should watch all those films because some of them I hadn't seen. Actually, I'd only seen, I think, Spider-Man 1 and 2 of Sam Raimi. I never saw 3 because everyone said it sucked. And I never bothered with Amazing Spider-Man because at that point, like, I just, why is Spider-Man not in the MCU? That's dumb. So I didn't bother with it. So I was seeing all these a lot of them for the first time. And I think Spider-Man 1 and 2 were decent films. I think they're a bit dated compared to the MCU. I think they're more of the old school kind of Superman, Christopher Reeve style, formulaic superhero films. I think they're a bit dated, but they're decent films. 3, I thought was one of the worst things I have to sit through in my entire life. Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2, I also thought was garbage. I get what people say with Andrew Garfield with the quippiness. I thought he was a little bit too much of an asshole, too jerky. He was kind of like, I don't know. I guess he was better as Spider-Man than he was as Peter Parker. I just did not like his Peter Parker at all. I was like, this is not Peter Parker. So what No Way Home does to me is like redeems all the worst parts of those films. No Way Home made me like Andrew Garfield. I was like, oh my God, I really love Andrew Garfield in this film. I thought he was amazing because it's a version of that character that's who knows how many years past when we saw him in Amazing Spider-Man 2. He seems like a much more sober character who's learned a lot since we saw him last. Much more mature character. And I absolutely loved it. And it made me realize what Andrew Garfield could do with really good writing and really good directing, because I just love the MCU. I love John Watts. I don't know that he got that in his Amazing Spider-Man films. And also Jamie Foxx. I thought Jamie Foxx was ridiculous. It was like just laughable in the Amazing Spider-Man 2. And then seeing him here, I was like, wow, he's a great Electro. So it kind of redeemed those films. And of course, you mentioned the MJ moment. Definitely, like it was when the tear, you could see the little tear going down Andrew Garfield's face. That's when I lost it. I was like totally lost it, seeing him get emotional. And just a lot of the quips that they had together, the conversations that they had together, knowing all of the films. Was it a little fan servicey? Was it a little nostalgic? Sure, but I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was perfect to have the three of them kind of compare notes, talk about like, oh, well, I fought aliens from space. Well, I've been in space. And then Andrew Garfield's like, I just fought a dude in a rhino costume. I just thought like those sorts of interactions I loved. And I just love Tom Holland and I love Zendaya so much. And I love that the MCU has taken a different take on the MJ character, to Michelle Jones instead of Mary Jane. And I just absolutely love Zendaya. I'm watching Euphoria season 2 right now. So I'll watch anything Zendaya is in. I watched the Dune movie just because she was in it, and then she was hardly in it. But I love Zendaya. I love Tom Holland as Peter Parker specifically. Although I see what you're saying about maybe he's not as good as a Spider-Man as he is as Peter Parker, but I love him as a Peter Parker. I thought this was the ultimate film for them. And most of all, to me, as a Spider-Man fan, like the one thing that I felt was always missing, the MCU never did the with great power comes great responsibility story. And I kind of thought, well, that's okay because they've done the Uncle Ben thing twice already in the previous 2 iterations of Spider-Man. The Amazing Spider-Man, all it was like the same exact thing, but look, it's Martin Sheen, so it's different. See, he's famous, so it's different. And they tried to throw in this convoluted stuff about Peter Parker's parents that just didn't work. But basically the Uncle Ben thing was the same. So I could kind of see why the MCU wasn't doing it, but it felt like something was missing. So to me, this is by far the best iteration of the great responsibility. With great power comes great responsibility story arc, which is like a nexus point for Peter Parker. It's his core to his story. You have to have it. And this was the best version of that because with the previous 2 iterations, like we were told that Uncle Ben is something that is important to him. And we knew he was. If you're familiar with the comics and all, the cartoons, you knew that Uncle Ben was important to him. But it wasn't really shown. Whereas here, like we have 2.5 movies to really cement that bond so that when she goes, like you really, really feel it. And you really, really feel why Tom Holland is so angry and wants revenge. In another great moment when Tobey Maguire stops him because he's already been through this. That's his old hat for him. Like you can really, really feel it more than you could. And the other 2 iterations of Spider-Man, you're just relying on your previous knowledge of, oh, Peter Parker loves his Uncle Ben. But here it's like they really showed you for 2.5 films just what a deep relationship these 2 characters have, Peter Parker and Aunt May. And Marissa Tomei, to me, knocked it out of the park. I loved her in this movie. So that is one of the big things for me, is that they really nailed that really key core part of Peter Parker's story that they hadn't really tackled before this. But yeah, this is just so much. Like I could just go on because there's lots of things that I loved about this film. But I did want to real quick touch on what this means for the future. What I understood was the plan was for Tom Holland to continue on in the MCU and Spider-Man to continue on in the MCU, but I think they left the door open. I think Darren was kind of talking about that earlier. Maybe left the door open for Sony to take over. I had actually saw a theory video before I watched the movie, before the movie came out, that was on one of the channels that I watched. They had this theory that, oh, it's called No Way Home because at the end, Tom Holland is going to get stuck in the Sonyverse and he's not going to be able to get back to the MCU. And that's how they're going to have Tom Holland in the Sonyverse from now on. I was like, no, don't do that. No. So when it didn't end that way, I was like, like the door is open either way. Like, I think that my understanding is the plan is to continue forward with Spider-Man in the MCU, but the door is open now. They kind of left themselves an out if Sony wants to take over and do more crappy movies. But and I was just finishing. Rob just got up. All right, so that's
no.
I love this movie.
I was reading something in the chat from Silver Surfer, and he said, Rob, go grab Silver Surfer Rebirth #1. Awesome comic with old school team Ron Lim and Ron Martz on comic book. Way ahead of you, buddy. So that's what I was grabbing off screen when you were finishing. No, that's great. That's how I wanted to be able to talk about this movie. Because I keep stopping myself. I love this movie, but I feel like I'm supposed to give myself permission for liking this movie as much as I do, because it's like there's so much that I love that I'm like, I don't know if I just got too much or just hit with so much stuff that I've been waiting my entire life to see. It's like the Wile E. Coyote finally catching the Roadrunner and being like, well, now what? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, great way of putting it. Now we're going to hear how Marc felt about this. I am going to quickly though, I wanted to say something that I really liked about this movie. For that is the focus on fixing the situation. Fixing the people, fixing the criminals is something that I don't think we've ever seen anybody really do to the degree that they went to in this film. Of heroes are supposed to save people, and that's including the villains. And with the body count of villains that we wish that they hadn't gotten rid of, this is if they could follow this kind of trend, like to do things like this, I thought that was a really great addition to the film. Okay, Marc, go ahead. Sorry.
All right. So first off, I want to echo what Darren said about his favorite scene, because that was my favorite scene as well. The Andrew Garfield Spider-Man, that saving MJ, I did tear up when that happened, even though I hated Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man. I hated his movies, but I did know that was a really nice symmetry. That was like a nice redemption moment. That one really got to me. Now, the other thing I want to start off by saying is I give this, if I was going to rate this movie from 1 to 10, 1 being the worst, 10 being the best, I give this an 8 out of 10, which is a positive rating. In fact, most MCU movies I would give 7s to. So giving an 8 out of 10 already pretty much automatically puts it in the top 10 for Marvel movies, for MCU movies for me. So I don't hate this movie. I know, last week when we did, Alyssa and I did a discussion on The Expanse with Josh, and me and Josh gave it season 6 10 out of 10, and Alyssa gave it 9 out of 10. We were kind of joking, why do you hate the season so much? Like just joking around. And it's kind of the same with me. I give it an 8 out of 10. In fact, I don't know if I like this movie any less than Rob or Darren, really, but I have some specific complaints about this film, things that rub me the wrong way, and I know Alyssa completely, utterly disagrees with those complaints, and that's fine. But that's just, and I think I agree with her that part of the reason is because I have no attachment to Spider-Man. I never liked Spider-Man growing up. The comics are always my least favorite. I thought he got all the spotlight, where I preferred people like Daredevil, the X-Men, or the New Mutants, or stuff like that is what I preferred to read. So I was never a Spider-Man fan. I didn't like any of the earlier Spider-Man films. The first one with Tobey Maguire I thought was crap. So I never bothered to watch the second or third one. When I finally did, honestly, I didn't think the third one was any worse than the first two. They all were equally as bad to me. I don't know if that's blasphemy. And of course, the Amazing Spider-Man stuff with Andrew Garfield, I agree with every complaint said earlier about Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man. It was awful. He was a hipster jackass. I didn't, and the plots were like crazy all over the place. It felt like just a rehash. Like, why are these existing? To me, that was the textbook example of a Hollywood cash grab reboot that's just there to make money. It has no reason to exist. So this film, No Way Home, does play a lot of nostalgia and a lot of fan service to Spider-Man that I think goes over my head and doesn't connect with me. And for example, when the three Spider-Mans meet up, I didn't like it. I thought it was a bit cheesy to me, even though I do love that Andrew Garfield moment. As I said, the redemption arc got to me, but seeing the three of them interact, I was like, this is just a bunch of fan service. I didn't care for it. Now, what I did like about the film was anything involving Doctor Strange. I loved. As Alyssa mentioned earlier, I feel the same way about Zendaya. Love Zendaya. I love her portrayal of MJ. So anything involving her or Ned, I loved. So that was my main focus. That was my main drive. And I did think the overall redemption arc for Peter Parker in this film worked. It was not the redemption arc, but his story arc, his character arc. I have mixed feelings about the fact that the whole film is about, like, the whole driving dilemmas of the film is because he fucks up, which on one level that annoys me when the main character is the one who causes all the problems. But on the other hand, it is a nice little character journey that he goes through, that he realizes that he screwed up and living with dealing the mistake and how the mistake led to, someone he loved dying. And I don't know. I really didn't care for that final ending where no one remembered him. I don't like the implications of what that has going forward. That kind of bothered me. Even though it was emotional, so I liked it, but that part of it, yeah, didn't really get to me. But yeah. So, and also all the villains, whatever, the Green Goblin, like they were just passable for me. Like I didn't really get into all that either. And I suspect that's because I have zero connection to the earlier films where they appeared. Now I will say, like, out of the three MCU Spider-Man movies, the other two I give 9 out of 10 to. So this is my least favorite of the three. But I still liked it. I still thought it's like top 10 MCU movies, as I said, but I just don't think it's a masterpiece. I had too many. To me, it relied too much on fan stuff. And the fact that it was the least Marvel, it felt less like a Marvel movie, more like a Spider-Man movie. And a lot of people were touting that as positives. To me, that's a negative. The main reason why I like Spider-Man is because of the MCU. So if you start to take that out, which is why the Doctor Strange stuff was my favorite part of the movie. But that's just me. That's my opinion on it.
No, again, I think everybody's bringing really valid stuff here, because nothing's, even if you loved it, there's still things that I wouldn't have done differently. I mean, what I think one of the greatest things that this movie did was fix the Green Goblin, how the Green Goblin should look problem. I really loved that they realized Willem Dafoe is use his face. He's perfect. You don't have to put makeup on. You don't have to put a mask on. He makes a certain look. And if you remember the way that the Green Goblin looks in the comics, he can make that face without having a mask on. And it was great. I freaking loved Willem Dafoe in this. I really loved that he got to go for it and be, again, but also show like vulnerability, which is also what we got to see from Alfred Molina, who, I mean, for those of us who did like the Tobey Maguire ones, and I think the majority, the consensus at least, is that Spider-Man 2 is the better of all of those movies. It gave us a chance to see Doc Ock and Peter act the way that they can. Like the way that we always kind of wanted the characters to like work together. If things had gone differently, those characters, instead of becoming ultimately always fighting throughout the decades, I really loved that. I really liked how so much of this thing, I mean, we all were probably going, it's just the stupid chip in his neck. Like, why can't we get that fixed? And getting to see everybody do all that, and I really just appreciated all those touches. And it does connect with me. I guess I do have like the same kind of connection I think that Alyssa has, which is like, I mean, Spider-Man was the first book I picked up. And throughout the years, good or bad, I've been a completionist about him. I was like more into X-Men and like Batman than Spider-Man after a while, but there's just something about Peter Parker and Spider-Man that like will always have a certain kind of thing for me. I think I think a lot of it has to do for me is like that whole responsibility feeling that Peter Parker's always carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. And a lot of us feel that same way, whether it's young Peter Parker or grown up Peter Parker. He's just trying his best and he's making mistakes along the way. And that's the same way we are. And I think that that's like the connection that I made way back in those days. And, I appreciate it even more now that I'm, as a man of a certain age. So before, did anybody else have anything left?
Well,
before
I have.
we switch topics?
There's another thing I wanted to mention.
What Rob said too, so you go first.
Oh yeah, no. Oh, if you're gonna jump on what Rob said, I'm gonna change the subject so you can.
Okay. Yeah. No, I was just gonna add on to what you said because that's very, very true about Peter Parker, and I think that's why for me Tom Holland is the best Peter Parker, because to me he's the most that just feels like a regular normal dude, whereas I couldn't relate to Andrew Garfield. Tobey Maguire was good in that way too, but I felt his film was too comic accurate. Too much for me to like relate to him as like just a regular normal person. Whereas Tom Holland Spider-Man, or Peter Parker specifically, I just really feel like he, in Far From Home as well, and Homecoming, he just comes across like a regular normal teenager with a regular normal teenager problems, and now more like a young man in this one more than a teenager. And you can just kind of really relate to him as like an actual person. So that's kind of why I really loved him.
Yeah, the one thing I wanted to mention is Alyssa mentioned earlier the Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. Like I think I was around like 5 years old or 4 years old when it came out, but I have vague memories of it, and I've been rewatching that on Disney Plus, and it was like bringing back a lot of nostalgia, and I'm just like, I can't believe how outdated Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. It's been a kind of fun nostalgia watch, but yeah.
I've been meaning to do that too, to get into that nostalgia watch. I haven't gotten to that one yet, but I would like to do that at some point as well.
Gee, man, I'm the dated one. I have the 70s old matte painting Spider-Man. It just had the same like swing sequence of every episode. Yeah. Well, I think you did hit on one thing, and I think I understand, Rob, your kind of reticence, because the one thing that this does lean on, and I think as you're talking about helps as been mentioned, helps redeem in many ways, is the Sony Spider-Man movie issue. Why are you nervous? Because you've seen Venom. That's why you're nervous. Okay. Can they do movies? Yeah. Carnage is what I'm talking about, the most recent one. It's like Fox doing X-Men movies is Sony doing Spider-Man movies. It's the same type of, you're making a movie with the characters, but you're not really making those types of movies. You're making mutant movies, but not X-Men movies. You're making like a superhero movie, but it's not really a Spider-Man movie. And that's why we were excited with him back in the MCU. And I think his interaction with all these other characters, like Marc was mentioning, the Doctor Strange and all that, that's kind of the exciting stuff for him to be able to interact, because that's a big part of his character. If he's taken back to Sony, we're just like, what nightmare is that going to be? Who's looking forward to Morbius? Who? Anyone? And I like Jared Leto.
Probably not going to watch it.
Yeah. So
I'm definitely not going to watch it.
There isn't a lot of faith, especially seeing where they were going with Andrew Garfield's Amazing Spider-Man. It's those mistakes that brought us to the MCU to fix stuff. So now it's like, you haven't learned. When you get to your movie, the one thing is you go, now how we can make all of our old movies look great and remind everyone of what we've done. Was there still some great story and action and things? Yeah, for sure. But the nervousness is understandable, I think, because Sony they're not making the same type of pictures that I think that we really want to see, or we believe are potential. And I don't know. I don't think I'm the only one here thinking that.
If I could snap my fingers and make Sony just completely disappear from Spider-Man and just Spider-Man just be 100% Marvel, and Sony had nothing to do with it, had no rights to any of the Spider-Man characters, that would be my dream. Like, I would do that if I could. Like, that would be my ideal.
But I think everyone feels that way. I haven't met anyone who was like, "Oh, I want more of the Sony Spider-Man." Who's like, and nobody wants it. But here's the thing: like, we talk about the ending, actually made me feel hopeful, because I didn't get the impression that they're like going to take Spider-Man back to Sony. I got the impression that they're going to continue on with Tom Holland in the MCU, and then Sony's going to do their own other thing that's going to be a separate universe. And what sort of cemented that to me is the whole Venom post-credit scene, because for me, that was their way of saying MCU is going to have a different version of Venom. Like the whole Tom Hardy Venom, that's going to be a Sony thing, and in a different universe. In our universe, they brought the Venom thing, so it's going to go to someone else. So MCU is going to have a different version of Venom. So to me, I think this is sort of separating them, so they'll have their thing, and Marvel will have their thing.
Secret War. They can do it right. They can do it right now.
I really hope that that's. As soon as you said that, we were all like chomping at the bit. I mean, I hope that's what happened. But and I did want to just quickly bring up Charlie Cox as Daredevil. Again, I was so happy with that. This sets up a whole new thing. I already got the new Daredevil Funko.
Oh, nice.
Because I had. He's looks like this. Yeah, I'm readily awaiting Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio trading blows sooner rather than later. Okay, so I think if nobody has anything else, we should get to the next topic. So does anybody have anything else?
Nope, good.
All right, Spider-Man No Way Home was that was great, guys. I love it. This was absolutely fantastic. Next thing we're going to be talking about is The Matrix Resurrections. Now, I talked to Alyssa previously, who says that she didn't really. She's kind of out on this one, I think. But I know Darren's seen it. I think Marc has seen it. I know how I feel about the movie, but I haven't heard anybody else's opinion. So we'll start with Marc.
By the way, you guys feel free to spoil it away. Just go ahead and spoil it all you want.
Oh, okay.
Okay. If you don't care about spoilers, you're never going to watch it.
I watched the pitch meeting video for it, which spoils it.
Oh, yeah.
I'm probably never going to watch it. So you go ahead and spoil the whole thing. I don't care.
Sorry, what was that, Rob? What did you ask?
No, I was just saying, like, I kind of forgot. So I just everybody's got it. Was it as bad as? Do you think it's as bad as some people were slamming it?
Well, here's the thing. It's kind of weird because before when this movie first came out, I saw a whole bunch of reviews saying that this movie sucked. It was awful. And then I saw a couple of weeks later a bunch of reviews saying this movie is a masterpiece, it's amazing, and it's so good. And it's people seem to be really split on it. And to the question of did I think it was a masterpiece or did I think it was another piece of shit? My answer is yes. It's because there's parts of it that I really liked and parts of it I really hated. On the hated side, I'll jump straight into it. All the meta commentary, all the things about, oh, we're making the fourth Matrix video game. Warner Brothers is going to do it with or without you. See, that bothered the hell out of me. But first of all, that's like a cheap shot from the creator to do that. I think that's really petty, in my opinion. And the other thing, the bigger issue, is it takes me out of the movie. Like, I watch fiction, especially science fiction, to be involved in the universe. I don't want to be sucked out and reminded, hey, you're watching a fourth movie because Warner Brothers is forcing them to make it. Like, that spoils the movie for me. I don't like it. There's a few other like the whole Morpheus thing. Like, why did that character even need to be there? Like, what was the point of the character? Like, I just felt like, oh, and including clips of the original trilogy. I'm like, what the hell is this? And then there was like they changed like the frame rate or something, and they did this weird speed on it that looked like I was watching like 1980s like TV show or something, not like a big budget like present day blockbuster movie. But what I did like about it, I enjoyed the character arc that Neo and Trinity had. I did think they went over the top with how they were basically the center of the universe, but I did think on a personal level their interactions were really great. It was good seeing them again, and I love the character of Bugs, by the way. Like, everything about her was good. The actress is good, is amazing. And see, here's the thing. I wouldn't be opposed to, and when I did a trailer review on this one, and the trailer first came out, because I was actually anticipating this. I thought this could be amazing or it could be shitty, and it turned out to be both. But because I'm not opposed to the concept of a fourth Matrix movie, because I think the third one sucked and ended horribly. So if they want to sort of fix the ending and give it a proper ending and redeem it, I'm all for that. But did this movie do that? I mean, in some ways, yes, some ways no. As I said, it kind of sucked with the meta bullshit, but I did like how it created this new dynamic where the machines were working together with the humans, and there was like a civil war between the machines. And this is why the best Matrix sequel is the Animatrix, because it actually watching the Animatrix made me appreciate 2 and 3 more, because it put it into perspective that the machines aren't just evil machines, that they were actually mistreated poorly by humanity, which is why they rebelled and why the war started. And so this movie gets back to that by having them mesh together and sort of create a new dynamic and give a sort of, even though it's not perfect, they gave a better ending than that crappy third movie did. So I appreciated that. So yeah, mixed bag for me.
Yeah, I mean, that's, again, I can't there's nothing that I find invalid about what you're saying at all. I mean, for me, like I keep saying to everybody, is I didn't need a Matrix 4. I didn't ask for Matrix 4. I was fine with just having the 3 Matrix movies, and then the Animatrix, which I agree. The Animatrix, there's parts of that are so good. That, like, especially the 2-part explanation of how they handled that, how they showed how everything went down, I thought was fantastic. So I was just in a place where they were like, oh, they're doing another one, and it's them, and I like Keanu Reeves, and Carrie-Anne Moss does not get enough work. So I was just like, yeah, I mean, like, I just went in with like zero, like, it was even less expectations than Spider-Man No Way Home, and I people who know me know I stayed away from everything for Spider-Man No Way Home, which probably kind of is also part of my reason why I don't know how to feel about it totally, because I didn't have any build up to it. And that's the same here, where I think I'm much more pleasantly surprised with it because I didn't care. I didn't have any like, but the thing is like, I agree with what Marc is saying about certain parts of it. I absolutely go, like, why did they have this? Why did they have that? But nothing that ever like took me away from like just enjoying a day at the movies, because I did go see it at the IMAX, and I was all masked up. It was, I wasn't scared about being in the theater, and it was presented and it looked great. And I love that one of the guy who plays Smith is the guy from Mindhunter. I loved that Neil Patrick Harris was in this, and all this, the blue, like it just felt like, I don't know, like they were trying a bunch of new things, taking it in a really weird direction, like being so meta. It's almost like, I could see where you get like kind of irritated with it or just put off with it altogether. I also agree that Jessica Henwick, who plays Bugs, who was also like the best thing about Iron Fist, and was, she was one of the sand
snakes. Yes.
Snakes of Game of Thrones. She's a really good actress. She's really good stunt actress. She is, again, she looked more capable in like Iron Fist than anybody on that show. And she's just been good in here, and I would love to see more of her. I really liked that Jada Pinkett Smith showed up, and that she wasn't having none of it. I liked that she, like, just because like how they showed, like, just because he's back doesn't mean that everybody's going to be glad to see him. I liked Keanu's journey a lot. I loved her, Carrie-Anne Moss's journey a lot. Again, in the end, anything that I felt that was like, was just never enough to make me enjoy this. For me, a mediocre Matrix movie right now is still better than most of the crap that's being thrown out on streaming, as far as movies for streaming goes. Like made for Netflix, made for Amazon, made for Hulu. A lot of that stuff I just don't care about. And this was just like, yeah, and I've seen it more than Spider-Man, which is crazy because I think I don't know. I don't like it more than Spider-Man though, which is weird. And I just definitely don't think that, again, this is one of those movies that just gets such a bad word of mouth that if you're going to dislike it, at least dislike parts of it the way Marc talks about disliking it, where it's like you be able to extrapolate the good from the bad. And again, I always go back to my Star is Born review, where I say, I didn't care for this movie, but I appreciate the hell out of how they made it and all the work that goes into it, and blah, blah, blah. So next up, though, after I've just gone off on another tangent about it, Darren, what did you think of the Matrix?
Are you saying we're not going to have a whole special show on the look back for Red Notice? I'm disappointed. That movie's unwatchable.
I haven't even seen it. I haven't seen it.
Yeah,
I purposely
you're not missing anything.
That's what I heard. Yeah.
Look, do we love Keanu Reeves? Yes. Is it awesome seeing Carrie-Anne Moss? Do we want to see the two of them together? Of course we do. Is it exciting to get your whole Sense8 buddy crowd with you to come make a movie? Sure, if you want to do that and you got it capable, totally. But it took me 3 chunks to watch this movie. I had to watch it one, about like a half hour through was like, I can't understand why it's taking so long. The Matrix started the movie like right off, and this is like taking 3 times as long to get to it. And the exposition, this is like exposition, the movie. There is so much talking. And then the fights. Matrix had the coolest fights ever, and this is like standard supercut movie of the week action stuff. All that excitement is gone. There's just it's it just makes why? I mean, I get the meta commentary on they're gonna do it whether you're with us or not. Okay, so you get a spit in their face on it. Okay, do you want to have a few heavy trans allegories mixed in throughout all of your dialogue? Sure, cool, I get it. It's fine. But it just becomes way too much. And even Jada Pinkett Smith in the bad old age makeup, it's like she's just there to talk and stand in the way and then turn her back and then go off and do your thing. And look, yeah, substituting Morpheus and I'm sorry, I don't know the gentleman who was the new Smith, but he's not Hugo Weaving. And sometimes you just have to go, let's do something different as opposed to rehashing what we had. You had some opportunities to do that. And it was, look, Silver Surfer's right. There is only one Matrix film. It was perfect all by itself. The second one had some cool freeway fight scenes. The third one, nobody watches the third one. Nobody, if they want to, they go and they watch Dragon Ball Z and they get their fight scene in a much happier circumstance. So was there some good stuff? Again, seeing some of the characters and seeing Neo and seeing Carrie-Anne Moss together, that was awesome. It just took so long and they milked the emotion out of all the little, oh, we almost touched scene. Oh, it was, yeah, it gets laid on really thick. So if you enjoy this, I'm really happy for you. It was a lot of work for me to get through it. And I just don't know why some things need to be made. I also don't know what the budget on this was because it looks really cheap.
Darren, this is why they need to be made.
I haven't seen the movie. I mean, that was really entertaining. Oh, I'm sorry, Rob. Go ahead.
No, it's okay.
I was just going to say, Darren, that was really entertaining. I haven't seen the movie, but I have just not been. I've never really got The Matrix. I liked the first movie. It was fine. I didn't see the need for a movie beyond that. And I also agree with Silver Surfer. So, and I'm probably never going to even watch this one. So not having seen it, I really enjoyed your commentary on it. Sorry, Rob, go ahead.
There's something, Darren, you said that I wanted to piggyback on, if I may, real quick. The about the Agent Smith, because that's a great point. Like, I do like the second movie. In fact, I made a video saying I like the second one better than the first one, which I know everyone is against, but I don't feel very strongly about that. Don't want to get into that. But what you mentioned about Agent Smith, he only needed to be in the first movie. Like, if you're going to have new movies, you don't need this character. And he was by far my least favorite part of the second and third movie. He didn't need to be there. He definitely didn't need to be in this movie, played by a different actor. Like the time we went, Mr. Anderson! And I was like, what the fuck is that? That's not how you say it. You say like, Mr. Anderson. That's how you're supposed to say it. Like, why even have this character? That was needless nostalgia for me, and it really pissed me off. But anyway.
Rob?
No, I'm definitely in the minority for this one. And again, I guess it's like, because I don't feel a strong enough emotion to dislike it. Like I just don't dislike it. I don't know. Maybe I'm just getting soft or something. I don't know. But I just enjoyed it. I know it's not great, but it's better than what I thought I was going to get, to be honest with you. I thought I was really going to hate it. And I think that what I got just softened the blow enough where I was just like, yeah, it's pretty good. I don't mind it. Does anybody else have anything on this one?
No, I wanted to say real quick that I'm glad I saw the negative reviews for this first, because I actually had high hopes for this movie. And if I went into this movie with those high hopes, I would have been massively disappointed. But because it softened the blow, people prepared me. This kind of sucks. That actually I was able to enjoy it a bit more because I knew it wasn't going to be that good. So I just watched it on HBO Max at home.
All right. Well, the next topic of discussion is something I actually did cover on my channel, but I don't think Mark or Darren has talked about this either. I think you probably have, Alyssa, and that's Eternals.
I did cover it. Yeah.
And I would really like to hear what the rest of you guys all think about Eternals, because Eternals, like Matrix, so many people went after it, and it's a long movie. It's a long movie, and it has a lot of things to do. And I know that like a lot of people would like to. I think people, or at least I do anyway, thought about the comparison of Justice League, what Justice League tried to do, and what Eternals tried to do. Both trying to tell stories for a group of people that didn't have any, not a lot of setup. DC has, at least name recognition with like Batman, Wonder Woman, Superman, Flash, and all that have been, a lot more people know about that, whether it's from TV shows or movies or animated series or whatever. So Eternals has a big problem because, like Guardians of the Galaxy before it, nobody knows who any of these characters are unless you're a huge nerd who sees a Celestial at his local comic book shop and goes, "I want that thing for my." I mean, I know who the Eternals were and are, and I've got the first 3 issues somewhere over there.
But Rob, that thing is really cool looking, though, so I don't blame
It
you.
But I really dug Eternals. There are definitely some things comic book wise that they didn't cover very well, as far as like the deviants, like the whole story of like the lifespan of a deviant and why they end up the way that they end up. I was not in the movies. The deviants actually start out as just kind of people, humanoids, and then eventually some of them they turn into like a monster eventually, and then the Eternals were created to fight them, and they didn't really do a good job with that. But I thought that there were parts in this movie that just were so much better than some of the stuff that I saw in Justice League, with characters that I didn't even myself know as much about as I did with the Guardians of the Galaxy, which at the time was also kind of limited. But I thoroughly enjoyed this movie, and I thought that even people who didn't get as much screen time, like Kit Harington, it got me really excited for the future of where they're going cosmically with the MCU. And it also gave me a Celestial coming out from the Earth. I just thought that was just really, really dope, because that's a big part of what's going on in the comics right now. But I will stop talking about comic book stuff, and I will turn it over to who hasn't gone first yet. Alyssa, I don't think you've gone first yet, or is it Mark?
I went first last time with the Matrix.
I think Darren went
so
first.
Alyssa?
I think you're right. I don't think I've gone
Yeah.
Okay.
It's Alyssa's turn.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you're right.
It's Alyssa's turn.
Yeah, I wasn't familiar with the comics at all, or just vaguely remember some of the comics from years ago. And I saw it right before I saw it, because I saw it like Friday night, and the reviews were coming in from like people saw it at midnight, and it was getting panned. It was being called the worst MCU movie of all time. It was and for a little while, I don't know if it lasted, but for a little while, it was the lowest rated film in the MCU on Rotten Tomatoes. So then when I saw it, I was like, is it really as bad as Thor: The Dark World and Iron Man 2 and 3? No. No, not even remotely close. Like, why were people hating on this movie so much? I didn't really get it. And I would say, though, that it was my least favorite of the Marvel films in 2021. I gave it a 7 out of 10, though. It's still a solid score. And I think I gave Black Widow 7.5. So Black Widow and Eternals are pretty close to me as far as how much I like them. It was a solid movie. I think, though, I came away with the opinion, though, and then I heard this echoed elsewhere on other YouTube channels, that this would have worked better as a Disney Plus show, because I think my biggest problem with this film was that it was trying to do the let's get the band back together theme. They spent time visiting each character and kind of introducing them. You also get to see them in flashbacks too, and so you see the characters elsewhere. But as far as the present day storyline, it's like, let's get the band back together. Let's go to each individual character. And by the time they get the whole band back together, the movie's almost over. But it took almost the whole movie doing that. So I feel like you get like an 8-episode Disney Plus show or 6-episode Disney Plus show, whatever. Take each episode to kind of go visit a character, and that's an episode. And then the last 2 episodes are the whole team together, and you have the climactic finale. And I get maybe they don't have the budget for Disney Plus to have the Celestial come out of the earth. I don't know if they have that same kind of budget, so maybe that's why it wasn't Disney Plus. I don't know if it's practical to do it that way, but story-wise, I felt it would have worked better. My other issue with this film is I love Kid Harington, and I actually loved the Black Knight. He was a big Avenger in my day when I was most of the comics in like the 80s and 90s. The Black Knight was a part of the Avengers. But I feel like he should have been either, if they did a Disney Plus show, they would have time to flesh him out, or just introduce him later, because he just felt tacked on. Like it felt like he really had nothing to do with anything. He just felt out of place in this film. And I'm excited to have this character in the MCU, and I'm excited that they got Kid Harington to play him. But I almost think they could have held off on introducing him because he didn't fit in this film for me. But with all that said, there's a lot I really enjoyed about this film. And if you're going to compare it to the Justice League, I mean, come on, like it's not even remotely close. The Justice League, it was just a pile of flaming crap. So definitely, and I do see kind of some parallels there, and in that light, I think it's way better than the Justice League. I enjoyed it. I gave it a 7 out of 10. And I definitely don't think it's anywhere near as bad as other people were making it out to be. But there were some things that I wish that it could have been done better.
I don't know. My button's got some kind of delay on it. Sorry. I first I want to be clear. I don't like the Justice League movie. The comparison to the Justice League movie was what I felt like was that DC was rushing to just get a big movie out with all the characters and not taking the time to build character. And Eternals kind of has to do the same thing, where we've got to get introduced to like an even bigger group of people in a short amount of time. And Guardians did it, but I think that works with James Gunn and the cast, and it's kind of just this surprise out of nowhere thing. But most movies need character, and I don't disagree about a Disney Plus series, because even then you wouldn't have to have like certain people around all the time that would cost more money to probably be in the show, like Angelina Jolie. Isn't that, you can't. How can you afford to have Angelina Jolie in an 8-episode TV series where she's in, like, let's say at least 50% of the scenes? They might have even had to recast if they would do that. But there's a lot that I think that argument for a lot of the Marvel stuff is, I would love to, since Disney Plus seems to be the place where they do their commercials within shows for other shows and set up characters that are just kind of like, oh, here's this person over here and this person over here. And we all know that it's just build up for other things. If they had done that with Kit Harington specifically, I think if they just plucked him out and put him in any kind of situation that they could write him in for a Disney Plus show, I think that would have worked a little bit better. I agree. So next we will go to Marc.
First off, I want to say, maybe the first Wonder Woman movie is better than Iron Man 2, Thor: The Dark World, and maybe there's another MCU movie I'm forgetting. But other than that, there's no modern DC movie better than the Marvel than the MCU movie. I'm sorry. Maybe that's unpopular to say, but that's what I feel about that. But anyway, as far as the Eternals, this is not the worst Marvel movie, and I totally disagreed with the critics saying this is the worst MCU movie so far. I'm like, have you seen Iron Man 2? In fact, the honest trailer, they just released an honest trailer for that, and they even said that it's like the worst MCU movie, and they showed like some ridiculous clips from Iron Man 2 and Thor: The Dark World. I was like, really? Come on. I absolutely agree with that. This, and actually it wasn't even my least favorite movie of 2021. I actually like Widow less personally, but this one was fine. I mean, it's I think I agree with what Alyssa was saying about everything she said about it getting the band back together, and they get back together like 20 minutes before the movie ends. And also it should have been a Disney Plus series. The characters were rushed. It was like that one girl who runs very fast, like she's like just hanging out on the ship for the whole movie and again reappears at the last like 20 minutes. And then what's his name, Camille Nanjiani, like his character just fucks off for the final third act battle. I was like, all right, I don't feel like being in the third act battle, let me just disappear. And that kind of bothered me as well. So but and also like the whole like plot about the celestial being born in Earth and like just bursting out. I don't know. To me, it's like this is a periphery movie, and they're trying to be like an epic movie, and like you're not an epic movie. Just acknowledge you're a peripheral Marvel MC movie that nobody really cares about. It's here to introduce these new characters, but to me, it felt like they were trying to make it such a big part of MCU lore, which I felt like they should have scaled it back a bit personally. But and also totally agree about Kit Harington shouldn't have been in this movie. And also it was weird having two Game of Thrones actors talking about how they love Cersei. Love you, Cersei. Especially two Starks. But anyway, yeah, just change your name or something. But anyway, the movie wasn't that terrible. It was enjoyable. It was entertaining. The characters were fleshed out. I do love that Bollywood producer guy. Like he was funny. But other than that, yeah, I mean, it's fine. Don't really have much to say about it either way.
Okay, so that leaves us with D1, who looks back. That's the first time I've said it. I've looked at it and actually said the whole thing to myself. That's good, man. What
thank you,
is your take on anything?
I enjoyed the movie. Actually, I think I enjoyed the beginning, maybe the first half more than the second half. In the sense that I did like some of the emotional bits that they brought. I like the idea that they were really dealing with consequences. Both when you have Angelina Jolie's, who has, what they first think is just, this kind of mind damage of the weight of all of her memories of this life is just too much to her, and how that sort of goes off. And even Druig's, well, he was, Druig's a dick.
Yeah.
But his whole like frustration of like, why are we doing this? We could fix these things right here. What is going? So that idea of kind of consequence and the frustration, and what do you do when you're in the world for that long period of time, and how much can you separate or not? I liked a lot of those concepts. The superhero part of this film is what I liked the least. The whole opening and even show up an action bit, it was like cool, but this is just like this is almost like the non-text introduction of Suicide Squad characters. Each one shows up and does their little bit and kind of thing, and you get to see who they are, and then they all gather up in the super line and glow and float down. And I mean, I can see the Justice League comparisons in that. It was like this is a little much. You guys just all naturally seem to know how to line up equidistance, like wherever you go. You naturally kind of do that. So those parts, I think, were just a little heavy and I think almost started to detract from what I felt was kind of getting to be an interesting story. Which I think is maybe why it kind of lost me at the end. Is one, it was the eternal road trip of getting the band back together, and it just, okay, now we go here, and now we introduce this person, and now we go here, and then we introduce this person, and then we go here, and we introduce this person. Is by the end you go, okay, we've got to have our big superhero battle, reveal the traitor, have the little thing, and that just in a way emotionally kind of fell apart. The whole deviant evolution never went anywhere. I never got anything of where this was, why they wanted revenge, how they were getting this power outside of just this new evolutionary thing. And then they just killed it and moved on, so that that didn't go anywhere. And it was like, it felt very much like we need to have a bad guy before we show the big bad guy, so it's a plot point. And then while the end was very epic and cool, and again, it's my science brain, and I'm sorry, folks, all I'm looking at this is going, what the fuck's going to happen with Earth? I mean, first, we're not even going to talk about the giant movement of what's underneath the surface, but you have this is like massively taller than Mount Everest. This is going to throw off the rotation of Earth, the balance. You're going to have weather systems are going to be disrupted. Again, I know it's my brain, but I can't help but see this and go, this is, well, I don't know. I think you guys kind of hit it already. This is like an Avengers level ending, not a side movie kind of ending that is affecting the whole planet. I was impressed that they do a post-credit of a giant celestial blowing the clouds out, pulling things up and talking to Earth and scaring the crap out of everyone. Okay, Earth is going to have like massive issues going on. If the next movie isn't them like building spaceships and shit, they've already had alien invasions. Half the population was wiped up. Now a giant head just popped out over the planet that you could be anywhere and see. The panic effect of this is going to be massive. So unless this gets caught up in the same Spider-Man, you don't remember Spider-Man and the giant head, it has effects. The one different opinion I might have from our other fine two guests is Kit Harington is a freaking dream. He is so charming. The minute he shows up, I loved him. I didn't care he was just in for a few minutes. Yes, it was hilarious having Rob Stark and Jon Snow facing off and talking about Cersei, like looking at each other. You're the pilot. Okay, you know, that was a little goofy and all. But damn, isn't he freaking charming as all hell? That's all I had to say with that.
I don't disagree with that. I just don't think he fit into the movie. Like, I think,
yeah, same. I love Kit Harington.
No,
He's
I
great,
love
but...
them, and I love that they're bringing the Black Knight in, and I love that they cast Kit Harington as him, and I love that. I just think they should have introduced him somewhere else.
Put him in a different movie.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, no. I mean, I can't necessarily. He was definitely like not used in this, but it was also like, okay, look, you got to introduce him at some point.
Yeah.
Introduce him in a side movie, and then you can focus on him later. Okay, that's fine.
It's just that there was already a lot of characters to go over. Like, to try to throw him in on top of it seemed a bit much. But
all of the characters.
There was one other thing I wanted to say about the post-credit scene with Harry Styles and the drunk whatever showing up. If it wasn't for Hawkeye, I would call this the worst post-credit scene in the MCU. But because of like the Hawkeye post-credit scene is by far, it's like way worse than anything ever like combined. But this is a second to me. Like I was like, I don't care about, like, I don't know. That just sounded really dumb to me. I didn't like it.
Well, I guess if you knew who the character was, like, I was like, oh, it's Silver Fox. Oh, yeah. But otherwise.
Oh, maybe. That's probably, but I don't know.
Yeah.
No, having Puck and Eros show up at the end. I mean, I do like that we're getting Thanos' brother. Do I care who's playing him? No. Do I know who Harry Styles is? Barely. Do I, and that's fine by me. I know that he's part of something, and I don't need anybody to spoil that for me. Just keep me willfully ignorant on it. But I do like seeing them in it because it's like it gets me closer to Adam Warlock, all this stuff. Like, yeah, if you know the characters, if you're a big deep dark down like into it, like I did really like it. Because it's like, this is like crazy to me, like Puck and Star Fox, like these are happening. This is happening in my lifetime. Like I'm seeing all this stuff. So like, as long as it hasn't been like a complete train wreck, like other things, I'm just so excited every time. And as long as they do something with it, right? Like give them something to do. Give it. I'm all here for it. One thing that I thought about though, for as far as the end of the movie goes, or the whole plot of the movie anyway, I really liked that this was going on, this big major event was going on that only a few people knew about. For some reason, I really liked that these are the guys that never got involved with anything that they weren't supposed to most of the time, except for it seemed like early in human history, they just really kind of did a lot. It explained a lot of like about mythology and things like that and how we see things. But I liked that this all happened without the, because the Avengers aren't a thing. And they even talk about that, like, I'll be the leader of the Avengers now, right? I liked that they kind of work on the sly, and that if suddenly people were showing up, like, who are these people? Like, I don't know. There's something about they live in anonymity among us, and they took care of something really huge without anybody else really knowing. I'm sure that there are people who know. I'm sure Nick Fury is up in Sword, like watching this, like, almost, yeah, this plays out, but get ready to blast that thing from space, like I'm sure the Sword station up there probably had, something, like I find it hard to believe that Nick Fury didn't know something about this that maybe we'll find out in a future movie. But I enjoyed that aspect of it, but I can also see why everybody else feels the same way. And that's Eternals. Like, does anybody have anything else to add before we get to our best of Marvel topic?
No, I just have to correct myself because I realized I called Star Fox Silver Fox. I was thinking of Silver Surfer. Star Fox is the character, not Silver Fox. So just had to say that.
I mean,
no, that's fine.
And I was going to say about the post-credit scene, I guess, like, Rob, you're the target audience for it, and I'm not, because I don't like the concept. I don't care about the actor either. I don't like the concept of Thanos having a brother showing up. Like, I'm not interested. And the fact they were coming in all drunk, like, I'm like, it seemed goofy to me. And I feel like if you have to
kind of those characters.
Yeah, if you have to know the characters to appreciate the scene, then I don't think it works. Personally,
yeah. Sure, absolutely. No, I'm agreeing that it was one of the worst ones, though. It was one of the worst ones because it was that kind of like, who the hell is that? Oh, I mean, if it wasn't for Patton Oswalt's voice, I wouldn't, you know what I mean? Like, nobody knows. They just go, oh, it's Patton Oswalt as another weird character, and then you get a pop singer for the next guy.
Yeah.
It is what it
to
is.
me, it's
just hopefully they do something with it worthwhile.
I'm sorry. It's still Hawkeye number 1, and number 2 for me is still the time that I went to see Ant-Man and the Wasp, sat there in the movie theater for 30 minutes, watching all the credits go by just to watch a fucking ant play the drums for like 30 seconds. Like, what? I should have just went home. So to me, that's still, those are two of my two leads.
Yes.
Hawkeye and then the ant playing the drums.
But in contrast, one of the best post-credit scenes is watching for all the credits and seeing Captain America showed up, being like, "So you waited for nothing. You sat around and waited, and you got no real payoff."
Yeah.
That's the
being trolled by
like
Captain
that.
America is always
trolling.
a plus.
Yeah. Okay, so if nobody has anything else, we will move on to the next topic, which is the question that I posed to everyone, which was, what is your top Marvel thing? What is the thing that you go back to the most? Whatever it is, what do you love the most? What item is it? Whether it be a film, a TV series, an episode of TV, a game, like what's the Marvel thing that you think means the most to you, or however it is, you know what I'm saying? I think if like that one thing that like means more to you than any of the other things that is Marvel. And this was difficult for me, and I don't know if I should just go first, but I'm not going to because I'm hosting and I'm going to cheat and make somebody else go before me. So but this time, I'm going to start with Darren again, if that's okay, Darren.
Yeah, sure, I can go first. Yeah, this was kind of an interesting thing to me because when you had posed it, to me it was covering like all Marvel things, and that I had to kind of look back on the life. It was like, that covers a lot because I mean I remember one of my earliest memories as a kid in kindergarten playing Spider-Man and Hulk with my friend. One of us could be Spider-Man, the other one was the Hulk because those were the two biggest characters at the time. So, I mean, it's like Marvel has been with me for so long. I remember my brothers Bring on the Bad Guys, origins of Marvel villains, so I could see where all the original villains came from. One of my more memorable comic pages is X-Men when they're going after the Hellfire Club when Wolverine kills Leland, which was an astounding thing because here you have a character who controls mass and gravity, and his instinctual thing whenever he's attacked is to make people heavy. It drives them down to the earth. It protects him. And then we have Wolverine leaping from above, using that instinct to make him even heavier and drag him down into the guy and take him. It was just like one of those early shots of like, wow, this is intense. So there's so much to kind of pull from. And maybe my answer is a cheat. But with all of that coming, I would say that my favorite thing of Marvel is the MCU itself. I mean, I can pick out a couple of specifics if we want to go in on that point. But as someone that appreciated the visual media more, loved the cartoons, loved the TV shows, wanted to see a lot of this action, and seeing a point from where you couldn't have the effects technology wasn't there, to a point where you could have the technology and then you needed the stories to come into it. And then you get Iron Man, which is an awesome movie. And then it builds on this world. And then you get your Avengers characters. And then they expand everything and they keep contributing new things. I look forward to every new film that comes in that builds on top of this story. So what is my favorite Marvel thing? The fact that they made the MCU happen at all. That they have this continually evolving storyline that has a pretty consistent overall vision guiding these projects and giving them individual life, as well allowing them to intermingle and affect each other and build off of that. It's an astounding piece of creativity, and it is something that still 14 years on now, or 13 years on, wherever we are in that, was it 2009 that Iron Man came out? We still have expectations of the next thing that's coming up. Yeah. So, I mean, again, if you want, I can dig in a little more specifics on things that I appreciate most out of that. But I mean, in a way, that's what I go back to, man. If I'm not feeling right, if I need a little pick me up, I've got a compendium of films that'll just tease whatever mood that I'm in.
All right. Wow, that's okay. You went big. That's good. That's a good. No, because I love this, because at least you made a great argument for why you did it. Like, because that's, on the surface, it's like, okay, come on, just we need to be a little more laser focused. But no, you did it in the perfect way, because you're absolutely right. That is, and I was
And after everyone
valid.
else, I can focus it down if we feel the need.
Well, I mean, I can't disagree with what you said. I mean, you at first I was like, yeah, that is a cheat. Come on. But you made some really good points. I cannot argue with the thing you said. So good for you.
First.
No, that's a good. No, I mean, if you're gonna come out like I didn't expect that at all, and that's what's great about it. So let's go next to Alyssa. What is your favorite top whatever?
Okay, so I'm gonna call an audible here. I'm gonna switch from what I was originally gonna say because I've already touched base with Marc, and I know Marc's gonna say what I was gonna say. And it also actually what I was gonna say about it kind of ties into what Darren was just saying. So I'm going to kind of reinterpret the question a little bit to what my favorite thing was at the time that it came out. And maybe not now anymore. I wouldn't call this my favorite thing right now. That would be what Marc is going to talk about. But I think the thing that meant most to me, because you mentioned that earlier, Rob, like what means the most to you, when it was released, and I still have a lot of nostalgia for this, even though I look at it now and I'm like, yeah, it's not the greatest thing. There's a lot of things that are better than it, but I have a lot of nostalgia for it because I remember how I felt when I heard about it and then when it was released. So I'm going to say the first X-Men film because I had waited so long for that to happen. I was, as I said, my heyday of comic books was like late 80s, early 90s. I think X-Men came out in 2000 or 2001. So a little bit after that. And I had wanted more than anything. And I watched the X-Men cartoon a little bit in the 90s. It was kind of toward the end of my time watching comic book stuff. And I wanted that so badly. And then they just never happened. And then to hear the announcement that the best captain of all time in all of Star Trek was going to be Professor X. And I was like, oh, that is perfect. Patrick Stewart is the perfect casting for this. And then Ian McKellen is still the perfect Magneto to me. And so the casting there was so perfect. When I watch the film now, I'm just like, yeah, Rogue going, oh, yeah, it's fine. It's not, I can't look at it now and say that it is the best thing that I've ever seen. But at the time, and just how much it meant to me to finally get this X-Men film. And at the time, I really did love it because I really did, mostly because of Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen, honestly. That's mainly why. And then, of course, that was the debut of Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, which I had never heard of Hugh Jackman before that. I don't think many people had. He really hadn't. I think Wolverine is what really put him on the map. But I was like, well, that guy is a great Wolverine. And Halle Berry, I thought, was the perfect casting for a Storm, minus that, what was that really bad line she had? She had this, yeah.
Do you know what happens to a toad when it's struck by lightning? The same thing that happens to everything else.
Right. Yeah. But I love that she was cast as Storm. I was so enamored with the casting and just loved it so much. But if you're going to ask me what my favorite thing is right this moment, it's going to be what Marc is about to talk about in a couple minutes. But just looking back at the time and what it meant to me and how much nostalgia I still hold for a mediocre movie, if we're being perfectly honest, like at best, but I still can watch it and really appreciate it for how much I loved it at the time that it came out.
Awesome. That's if you're gonna, because I know that you guys had talked about how you kind of had the same thing, and that's an awesome way to come up with something. And X-Men, like when you take the words, what it meant, seeing X-Men, I remember a lot of my memories are tied in with where I was, what movie was out, where I was going to movies. And I remember being at the theater for the first X-Men movie and being, again, for me, this time period that we're living in, I always said it was going to get here, but I wasn't, I never really committed to believing it. I just said it's coming though. It is. It's like the dream. All those like years of being like told this is stupid is gonna pay off eventually. And X-Men comes out and I just was so like over the moon. The first time Wolverine, like when he pops the double claws on the bartender, where it's the way he's standing, it's the comic book pose of like he's got the one arm this way, the other arm that way, and he's just like rah. That was one of the best moments. It was probably like up until that point for me in my life, that was one of the top moments I'd ever seen for cinema, because it was just Wolverine suddenly was there in front of me. And you're absolutely right, though, at the same time that I just watched it recently. And, at the time, this was like unbelievable, groundbreaking. The casting, Ian and Patrick, perfect casting. The whole beginning with dealing with the World War II and like actually going there. Whether the rest of it or not really holds up that great, it still has those memories where it's where it all started. Like, I feel like X-Men, there's arguments for other movies, like for modern comic book movies, like you could say Blade or whatever. And I don't mean to say it like glibly like that, because I think the first Blade movie is really good. But X-Men's where it all changed. X-Men came and then Spider-Man came, and it changed everything. And so even if it doesn't, it's when people talk about real classic movies like Citizen Kane and how much of an influence that had over everything else that came before it. And even though I look back on Citizen Kane and go, yeah, I can see why people thought at the time that it was really great, I still find it to be not, I don't really like it that much anymore, even though I appreciate what it did for everything else. And I feel like X-Men is the like Citizen Kane, the thing that kind of shot everything else up, where everybody was looking at how to do this from then on, and with very varying degrees of success. Everybody was trying, to bring up all sorts of comics, whether it be independent, Marvel, DC, everybody had deals everywhere. And that legacy is almost worth mentioning it for just that. And so it's just like, that's an awesome choice. Also I haven't really talked too much about the chat. I have been chatting with them in the chat a little bit, but I want to thank everybody that's been here so far through our thing, with Silva, of course, being here, the Rich Rum, of course, being here, Rena being here, Bill Casey popping in. All the way at the very beginning, we had Wet Dreams. So great handle to lighten the day for me to say words like that and not laugh. Sorry. And then what else do we got? Sorry. Brandon Howells also in the chat. Welcome. Okay, so let's just get to. Does anybody else have anything to say about X-Men? The Alyssa's choice being X-Men.
No, I think it was an awesome choice, and yeah, I think it's completely. That is the breakthrough. While Blade was awesome, this was the one that had the effects, the visuals, and a stellar cast behind it. So yeah, I think this was definitely the Citizen Kane, as you said, of superhero films.
That is a very, very good analogy, because I actually feel that way about like most old movies from like the 60s or earlier, where people go, oh, this was revolutionary. You watch it now. I'm like, yeah, but I've seen it a million times now. But I can appreciate that was something new back then. And that's kind of how I feel about the X-Men too. Like, I don't think it's anything earth-shattering now, but if you look at it for what it did for the superhero genre at the time, and just for me, the nostalgia of thinking about how I felt when I first saw it, or just even the idea of it. Yeah, it's really great to look back on, though it doesn't like really hold up as, I wouldn't call it one of the best superhero films compared to everything else that's come out since.
But it is what revived the superhero genre. It's what made it a thing in the 2000s. Like before that, you get the occasional Batman movie or whatever, but it wasn't really like a thing. And as far as Blade goes, I did want to say, like, technically it is a comic book superhero movie, but I never felt that way to me, especially when it first came out. I thought it was a very typical horror action movie, which there were a lot of in that time. But X-Men felt like this real true like comic book form of movies.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
And with that, we should jump over to Marc's choice here. I'm really excited.
All right, so since you guys interpret the question different ways, I'm going to have two answers. I'm going to have the answer of that Alyssa alluded to. Had the same thing, which is what in my opinion is the objective best piece of Marvel fiction. Like looking at, as a grown up, as a 43-year-old, looking at it now, what is the best thing Marvel's ever done? This is it. And the other one is the nostalgia answer, the thing that hit me most when I was a kid. But first, let's start with the best piece of, and it's got to be in the MCU. And I'm going to be more specific than Darren because I agree with Darren that the MCU is by far the best thing that Marvel's ever done. And so it's going to be in the MCU. For me, the crescendo of the MCU, the culmination is specifically Avengers Endgame. To me, like, especially like when I saw this in the theaters first time, I was absolutely blown away. I love time travel movies, and I think this is one of the best time travel movies ever. In fact, like a while ago, Alyssa and Don, Willie, and a bunch of us did like this top 20 time travel movie thing. And Darren, you were there. And if we did another one recently, this would probably be my number one. I think is my favorite time travel movie of all time. Now, it's one of my favorite movies of all time, period. Like nonstop, full stop. But when I went back a year or so after this movie came out, and I watched every MCU movie in order, ending with this one, and I loved it even more because then I realized just how much it pays off. Like every single movie, pretty much every single, all the ones that are worth paying off anyway, it pays off. And it even does callbacks to Thor Dark World. But anyway, it pays off like all the character arcs, and it has so many characters going, and yet it doesn't feel overcredited, which I'm sorry for me, Infinity War did. But it doesn't feel overcredited. It doesn't feel like their characters are just there to be there. Like every single character, it pays off so many character journeys throughout this entire 22 movie, or whatever it was at the time, run. And it's just so incredibly impressive that they did that. And it was such an interesting, and I love that it was a really like emotional, thinky movie rather than simply a over the top, action movie. Although they did have their third act, which in my opinion is the best action Marvel third act ever made. So everything about this movie I love. For me is one of the best movies of all time. So yeah, that I would say is the best, objectively the best piece of Marvel ever done to this point. Now for the nostalgia answer, I don't know if I'm cheating a bit here because Rob, you said like best movie, TV show, game. You didn't mention comics. I didn't know if that was off guard, but I want to say
I think comics was where it came from. So comics would be kind of like it's fine to talk about, but like they're the jumping off way. Like we wouldn't have them without that. I mean, of course, for me, the answer would be comic books all the way. I would have gone first and said comic books. Now that dropped the mic.
No, well, I'm going for.
I mean, I did word it weird, and you're not cheating at all because I have kind of this similar answer.
But I'm not going to have. I'm going for a very specific comic run that I think got me into long form storytelling. As a comic book series that came out when I was, the run of the series, it was came out when I was like 11 or 12, and I remember waiting so impatiently for each issue to come out, and I would run to the store and get it. And it's a series I had within the X-Men. Where the X-Men kind of like, I think Professor X died, And it started with Rogue being killed, and then the X-Men like shattered, and they were all broke up, and there were no X-Men, and they were all in different places roaming around. Wolverine was like roaming around Australia being hunted by people, and they introduced characters like Gambit and Jubilee in the series run, and they were all like spread out like in different parts of the world and completely disjointed. And to me, that was like no comic book thing I've ever read, and just looking back on it, like I still think it's one of the best sort of long form of storytelling, and I wish they would adapt this in some way. They've adapted other X-Men comic book runs, but they've never done this one, and that was always my favorite, the one that really meant to the most to me and informed my sort of taste in fiction going forward. So that's what means the most to me nostalgia wise, but objectively I think that the best piece is in game. But yeah.
All right. I'm actually kind of surprised that that's on here, but not because it's not a valid option, but because I kind of didn't even really consider it. Only because there's something about Infinity War and Endgame that I've got something like I put it on a different kind of level almost. But that's a very valid question because it's high up there. I mean, the longer this goes on, the harder the lists become to put in places, because I'm not above putting something that just came out at the top of the list, because I appreciate the improvements that they make, despite how a lot of people can. I think there is an argument for the formula, right? The MCU formula, but there's always something different happening. And I like that. That's a really good choice because I freaking love Endgame. And I go back and forth on which one I like more between that and Infinity War. Because one's the consequences of not making a sacrifice, and then the other one's about sacrificing everything. Well, not just about that. But for me, this was really, really hard. And now I'm glad that I'm seeing that everybody really put some thought into it, except for Darren, who went big. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But like for me, it came down to three things. And I had to like narrow the three down to one, because part of me goes back to the X-Men, the animated series. Where like you were talking about, Mark, with the comics and like when Gambit showed up, and around that time where they're out in the desert and the Reavers are there in Australia, and the Siege Perilous, and everybody, Longshot gets introduced. Then I finally got my Longshot here. Freaking love it. I got my, and then right as my counterpoint, I got my X-Men, the animated series Gambit sitting right there. So it's like, I had a hard time not picking X-Men, the animated series, because it came to me at that time in my life where the comics I was really huge fan of, and it was telling the stories from the comics, and it became really hard to not pick this because of how much it was intertwined with what I was reading and what I was feeling and the age I was at. But I also, there are nostalgia goggles a little bit too much for the animated series for that. As much as I'm excited for it to come back in 2023, which I will be covering the heck out of the new X-Men animated series in about a year or so. And then it came down to two really tough choices for me, because I do consider these two things to be the best. And I had to pick like one of my favorite kids, I guess, in a way, because I do have this argument in the back of my head between saying Captain America, the Winter Soldier, and just flat out saying that, because as far as MCU movies go, that is my favorite MCU movie. But it came down to two, and I'm going to say the second thing first, because it's just as good just about as the other. And the one I had to get rid of was Daredevil the series on Netflix, because I've always been a huge Daredevil fan. Not as I didn't get into Daredevil as early as I did Spider-Man or the X-Men, but once I got into Daredevil, I saw how many great stories were in the Daredevil book that were just really great street level stories, where there were a little less characters like Rhino and Electro, and more like Bullseye and Elektra and people that had problems on the street, and I liked that a lot. And the way that the Netflix series did it with the casting and everything, the way they shot the action sequences, some of the best action sequences of all time are on Daredevil. At least filmed for television action sequences. I don't know. There's not much better than that. And just, again, there's something about whatever was going on at that time for the Netflix shows that Daredevil just was like lightning in a bottle. And we're getting a chance to see a new version of that pretty soon. But I still, as much as I love Charlie Cox and D'Onofrio and Daredevil, and it really, really was a hard choice to switch to this one that I'm going to pick right now. But the reason I'm picking this one is because as far as filmmaking goes and acting goes and writing and just being batshit crazy and up my alley so much. And it was, to me, like one of the best ways to adapt something that I didn't think was even adaptable. Same as kind of how I feel about Eternals, which I was like, when that was brought up, I was like, how you even...
Uh-oh.
Did we lose Rob?
He was supposed to get to it and speak.
The answer is
everything's going haywire all of a sudden.
there you go.
There you go. You were about to get you were building up to your favorite and you just froze.
Oh no. Okay, so what was the last thing everybody heard?
You were about to get to it. You're like, my favorite thing is.
Yeah. Literally, we couldn't have made it up more.
I think my favorite thing, and I think this thing, I honestly do think this is just technically on like filmmaking and acting and being batshit crazy and all of this, and just totally up my alley. And I think it's, when I think of how you could do this character, how you could do this version of this world that this character inhabits, and still be fun for fans, that really, and be completely innovative in the way that they present a comic book story. And that's Noah Hawley's Legion. Every season of Legion to me was just such a fantastic piece of art. I felt like Legion was art, and it solidified, like I'd only known Dan Smith from The Guest, which is an amazing thriller. I didn't even know anything about Downton Abbey at that time, but he was perfect as David Haller. Aubrey Plaza it gives one of the, I think, is her best performance that she's ever given. She gets to just be absolutely let off the chain. The art direction, the cinematography, the costumes, the fact that it's a trip of the mind. You're in people's heads. Anything is possible. Anything can happen and does happen. And it's scary and creepy. And like, there's a scene where like eyes just show up out of nowhere. And it's one of the scariest things, one of the most unsettling things I've ever seen. And the way that the show talks about mental illness and about powers and somehow melds the X-Men universe in here without being full X-Men, and giving us an interesting Professor Xavier story and the Shadow King. Like, we got the Shadow King, which is like freaking bananas. And the way that they were able to present that character in so many different forms that it takes as this parasite sucking on David Haller his whole life. And the music and just all the different directions that they took, and how to make a television show where it was like never the same thing twice. I just find it to not just be great comic book stuff, but the stuff that makes great television, period. is that nobody takes chances like this very often. There's plenty of shows that show violence and sex and all the things that supposedly push the limits of great, TV or film, but it's when people really are allowed to make art sometimes. Legion isn't for everybody, but I think that says something about how good Legion is that you have to like experience it to believe it. And when we talk about thinking, like think pieces and stuff like that, I mean, there's so much going on that I think tons of people can relate to in the world when it comes to mental illness, and never making it feel like, something to be ashamed of, but something to try to be conquered and to understand better. And so many different themes in this show that were done in such creative ways that I can't think of a better example of like what not just good comic book television or movies can be, but just how you can elevate the whole thing every once in a while to something greater than ever expected. And I know that I'm kind of just gushing and gushing and gushing because I mean, sure, it's not 100% perfect, and there's a couple of instances where I'm like, I wish they would have cast somebody different here or whatever. But seeing this all play out, a character that to me is pretty much so hard to do, a guy who can basically do anything but is trapped in his own mind by powers and forces that outside of himself, and the people that get caught up in that and not understanding his illness, which is, I think, a great theme for it, about how so many don't understand mental illness, that they wove that into the plot line so seamlessly of, there's nothing wrong with him. He's just got powers. And how they eventually discover that, yeah, you can have powers and you can also be messed up too. And it's just such a great, great narrative that I don't think that they have topped it at all. And it's only been like 3 years since it's been off the air. And as great as everything else is so many highs and lows of the MCU, mostly highs, and Endgame being this like perfect cherry on top of everything else, where you go, I don't think it'll ever get up to those levels again. And it's very possible that that's true. I always like to go, but as Legion sits in this little special place where I don't need it to be part of anything else to be just about perfect. And that's my choice.
That is not a wrong answer at all. I still think that Legion season 1 is a perfect season. The whole series is great, but that first season unto itself, I think, is astounding. And you're right. God, I didn't even think of it, because it is. Legion is kind of this own singular thing by itself. Because while it is Marvel and it is X-Men, it's all unto itself, and there is nothing else like that. So I don't know. I think you got the right answer there, Rob. The rest of us are all wrong.
See, Rob, that's a very interesting choice, and I'm sure I'd have a lot to say about it if I ever actually watched the show, which unfortunately I have not. It's one show people have been telling me that's really good, and I've been meaning to get around to it, and I've heard good things about it. I just haven't gotten around. I kind of forgot about it, to be honest. But now you're inspiring me to actually finally get around to watching it. So yeah, one of these days I will actually watch it. But I also wanted to mention your Daredevil thing, because as far as the Netflix Daredevil go, I would pin it down specifically to season 3 of Daredevil, which to me is one of the most perfect seasons of television of all time. Like, season 1 dragged a little bit. Season 2 was amazing with the Punisher storyline, but as soon as they got into the hand stuff, it started going downhill and not liking it. But season 3 was like a masterpiece, like from start to finish. It was like a masterclass in how to write suspenseful tense, on the edge of your seat storytelling that I've ever seen. So I definitely can't doubt you there. And I'm sure I'm gonna love Legion when I get around to watching it as well. Sounds good.
Yeah, come on. Daredevil created the phrase hallway fight, and everyone knows what you're talking about. So, yeah.
It used to be Old Boy. You know, everybody talked about the hallway fight in that movie, Old Boy. And then a comic book movie on Netflix, or comic book series on Netflix, comes along and just every season somehow is able to create action sequences that are so visceral because it needs to be. Do you have people that understand the content and what it means to be, like, what it feels to be Matt Murdock hitting somebody? Everything just felt so grounded and real on that, and I can't I mean, I disagree about some aspects of what you guys are saying about different seasons and stuff, but I mean, we're all still in the same place about. Do you know what I mean? Like what you've taken away from about season 3 isn't necessarily how I feel about season 3 or how about the hand, but at the same time, when you talk about all of it as a whole, like, season, like, you couldn't have, it wouldn't be even in consideration if it wasn't for season 3 or all of it. That's why I also had to ultimately go, was because I just didn't feel the same way all throughout like I did with Legion. But again, just this was, I'm really surprised, and I'm so happy that everybody like really took the time to be I don't know what I'm trying to say. There's a word that I'm trying to remember, but everybody was very eloquent and very well thought out. I appreciate taking the time to like take it seriously, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And that was just great choices. So we have been going on for a little while, but I do want to talk briefly about some other stuff. I don't know how much longer everybody else has, but I know that there are other topics to get to besides. We've been talking comic books and Matrix and everything else, and now it's kind of time to switch over to regular TV, where we get to talk more about like people that do regular things, but not really, because now I'm looking at my list, I'm like, man, this is all over the place. Like, you've got Squid Game written on here, and Wheel of Time, and Only Murders in the Building. I mean, those couldn't be any more different. But I suppose we should talk about, there's a show that everybody's kind of talked to me about and asked me if I've seen it, and I keep saying that I hadn't, and I'd had difficulties with Hulu, and that's Dope Sick. For some reason, I every time I try to watch it, Hulu would kick me out. It's like they didn't want me to watch their show or something. But everybody really seems to like Dope Sick, and I have my own thoughts on Dope Sick. And for this time I'll go first and just tell you what I think about Dope Sick. I think Dope Sick is a really great, really probably one of the best made educational films I've ever seen, because that's what it really in the end felt like to me, despite all the there's several great performances in this show. I felt like there was just way too many speeches going on. I just felt like every scene just about had like that, if it wasn't with somebody actually dealing with something like in pain or whatever, and somebody just talking, I felt like everybody was standing on a soapbox. Not that it's not an important topic. I just felt like it does get its educational message across, but I really felt like I was getting hit over the head with stuff that I already knew. But if you didn't know this was a great delivery system for that message. And again, showing like really great performances from people who go through this. And I'm a sucker for Michael Keaton, who I thought was fantastic in this. So it wasn't the performances or anything that I didn't like about this. I just felt a little bit off in the presentation, where I just felt like I was being talked to the whole time about stuff that I didn't know, but just because, or stuff that I already knew, but just because I already knew it doesn't mean that a whole bunch of other people don't need to hear this or see this. You know, people that might never know about what happened with the Purdue people and the creation of OxyContin, and having a family member in my house who lives with chronic pain and could have easily gotten involved with this as well, but and thinking of what could have happened to them if they had gone down this route. So I think it's an important show. I just, as far as like watching it, it felt like for me, it felt like a chore, and I don't like feeling that way about this. I felt like I was the one person who's just like, yeah, I already know the story, and seeing it recreated is really, really sad. And that was another thing. It was just so sad. I think I needed to be in a place mentally where I could sit there and watch it and not feel that way. But I was already kind of in a place. So when I watched it, I was like, boy, this makes me, I'm glad I've never done hard drugs before, but this almost makes me want to take a pill to forget that I watched it. It's just, but again, like I said, I think it gets its message across really well, and has like fantastic actors delivering that message. But I would like to hear what everybody else thinks about Dope Sick that has seen it.
Well, can I go first on this one?
Yeah, actually, I have to
Sure.
bow out. I've got some things I've got to jump into. So I haven't seen it, so I'm happy to turn that over for you guys. It's on my list of things. But I just wanted to say thanks to Rob and everyone for having me here. I'm really glad to get a chance to talk about the movies that we did, and I love the whole Marvel question and everything. But sadly, I have other obligations.
And Darren, don't let Rob fool you. You should watch it.
No, it's on my list. You're right.
I'm glad.
I'll watch half of anything.
I'm kidding, Rob. I'm kidding.
But
I'm talking about it in a way of like clinical. But thank you so much, Darren, for being here. I'll see you next Thursday.
I'll see you on Thursday for our new Peacemaker coverage. All right, take it easy, y'all. Bye.
Yeah. Bye.
All right, so, you go first, Mark, and then I'll go.
Because I watched the show when it first came out, like Hulu advertised it to me, so I immediately started watching it, and I was trying to get everyone I knew to watch it because I was so blown away by it. And although like I knew about this topic as well, and the Purdue family and everything, but I think I don't know. I guess maybe I just look at this material different than you because to me, it's not just the acting that's amazing; it's also the character stories. Like it's amazing acting really flushes out the amazing character stories, and I actually think it's very. And for me, it never came off as particularly preachy to me. No, I think there's a lot of movies and shows that do tackle a subject like this, and to me, this is one of the best examples of that. Like I compared it to the movie Traffic, which I loved, but I actually think this is better than that movie because of the character stories, because of the acting, and you really get and I think that is the best way to explore a topic like this and to introduce it to more people rather than a dry documentary. I watched this documentary about the Purdue family. I fell asleep during it. I think it's more interesting. It's better to get people involved and aware of what's going on through great fiction storytelling, which is based where there's a touch of reality to it. And I think all the actors are amazing. I love Michael Keaton. I love the young girl who plays the minor. I love the what's her name? Rosario Dawson. Yeah. Love her. I love the dude who plays what's his face Purdue. Like I've seen that actor in many things before. Good in this. Yeah. And so I love the nonlinear storytelling. That's another thing that really jumped me in. And funny, a lot of people complained about that as their biggest complaint. Which those people have a right to be wrong if they want to. But to me, it was the fact that they did the nonlinear storytelling was a work of art. Like to me, it was a masterpiece. The way because they went through different time periods. They went through the 90s, the 2000s, 2004. But each of those different stories flowed together, and each episode had a specific theme. And in fact, you find out things in earlier storylines at the end of the season that actually deserve to be at the end of the season. So had they went in linear order, it wouldn't have it would have not been nearly as good. And that's impressive as someone who appreciates good writing, good crafting of the story. This is one of the best crafted stories that I've seen. And so all that combined, I loved it. I think this is one of the best sort of pieces out there on a heavy topic like this that I've seen.
Yeah, it's Michael Stuhlbarg is the actor.
Yes.
Who's been in Boardwalk Empire was fantastic on that. I think he was in a Coen Brothers movie. I think he was a Serious Man. I think he was in that. He's that guy that from something. He's one of those character actors where you just, whenever you see him in something, no matter what the end result for the quality of whatever you're watching is, he's going to give a great performance. He's one of those guys. It's just he's going to be good. I don't disagree. I mean, I like it, but I had to feel like I still needed to say that for me personally, I just felt like I was being, I don't know. I just couldn't get there like everybody else, but I do like that you brought up the structure. Because that was not a complaint of mine that I had, was going back and forth, because it was, sometimes you have to tell a story like that, like you said, to have everything really make sense and connect right. You have to show how certain things happen then, and then bounce over to there. There was none of this was ever about anything else. Again, I go back to what I said about other movies and stuff, where I appreciate what they did and how they did it, but for some reason it just wasn't connecting with me on a level that I wanted it to. I was disappointed in myself for not reacting the way everybody else did, because I feel like I'm supposed to react this way and I'm just not getting there. But that's just me. Alyssa?
Yeah, I'm definitely on I'm on Team Marc on this. Marc actually is the one who suggested that I watch it, and I'll be honest, over the years, it's been hit or miss. Sometimes Marc recommends things that I end up loving as well. And then other times I'm like, I don't like it quite as much as you do. This was definitely one that I appreciated every bit as much as it lived up to the hype that Marc had given it to me. I didn't see it as being I too knew about the story already. I knew about the Purdue Pharmacy. I knew about OxyContin. I knew all of it. To me, it wasn't just for people who didn't know it yet, because I knew it, and I think Marc did as well. But I think that it was presented in such a fresh way, in a very powerful way. It was a very powerful way of telling that story, with the acting and all the things that Marc already talked about. The acting was amazing, and the nonlinear storytelling was a very key part of that as well. I love how there's 3 different time periods, and each time period kind of ends when it catches up with the other, the beginning of the next forward time period, and then the most forward time period just is kind of the end of the story. And you're absolutely right, Marc. Some of those things needed to be at the end of the show. So I thought the method of storytelling was brilliant. The fact that it focused on different perspectives of this issue. So it wasn't preachy to me in that, because we saw all the different perspectives. We got a lot of the Purdue Pharma's perspective. We got the DAs who are trying to take Purdue Pharma down. We've got the DEA agent who is trying to take Purdue Pharma down. And then we've got, on the really lowest levels, we have the miners, the people who are most affected by it. Then we had the doctor who was duped into prescribing it, and then it gets hooked on it himself, which Michael Keaton was amazing. But all these different perspectives, and the salespeople, and I love an actor that I hadn't mentioned before when I talked about this, Will Poultier. I always forget how to pronounce his name. Will Poultier. Poultier. I love him in everything that I've seen him in, and he is fantastic in this as well, playing that salesman who is, basically a drug dealer at first, and starts developing a conscience. And that girl that he was into, I was like, why are you into that chick? She's a terrible person. that didn't quite have that same story arc that he did, where I loved that story arc too, and all of these different perspectives on the same issue. I thought it was an absolute masterful way of telling this story. So even though I knew all of this before, this is way more interesting than sitting there watching a documentary about it. This is the method of storytelling. The way that they told the story was masterful. It's just brilliant. So, absolutely, one of my favorite shows as well.
Yeah, that makes this. Yeah, this is definitely a me problem. I mean, because I know it's no, because I know it's like I'm seeing something, like I go to the a museum and somebody goes, "There's the Mona Lisa," and I go, "Yeah, I've seen it." You know what I mean? But like, even though I'm right in front of the real thing, I'm kind of like, I'm supposed to see something here, and it's like I know that it's hundreds of years old, and I'm like, some guy drew some stuff on a painting, like. I know that I'm supposed to have that, and maybe that's just something missing inside me at very convenient times. But it's not like I'm not unmoved by it at all either. It's just some reason I just can't get to where everybody else is. I feel like I'm right almost there, and I'm like,
I mean, that's fair, Rob. That's just your opinion, the way you look at it.
But I know that everybody's kind of we're pushing it here, and so. We didn't get to like all the topics, but I do want to give some recommendations for things that I have not talked about on my channel. Real quick, just gonna kind of gun through them. But I do think for me, and I'm not going to post this to you guys unless you know it. But I've been going up and down all year about what my favorite actual thing was for this year, this whole year. What have I seen? What have I watched that's like my favorite? And I've gone back and forth on different things. And I finally landed on my favorite thing of 2021 is The Underground Railroad by Barry Jenkins that was on Amazon Prime. There were a few other things that I really liked this year that are up there, like Only Murders in the Building, Yellow Jackets, Midnight Mass, Station 11. If you have not seen on HBO Max, is fantastic. I cried at the end of Station 11. I literally cried, and I don't cry. I'm not like one of those, I'm a man and I can't cry. I just don't cry very often. And that hit me like in a place at the end that I think is going to hit a lot of people when this show gets finally discovered by more people because it was just a limited series. But fantastic. But in the end, Underground Railroad really challenged me, not just as a viewer, but as a reviewer, as somebody who talks about stuff. And a lot of the things that I have on my list are have things that are very difficult subject matter. Underground Railroad really just is so powerful that I have to put it at the top because I had not conflicting emotions, but just it really woke up a lot inside me. About America and its history and about hate and injustice and the triumph of the human spirit. And I've never been a big triumph of the human spirit guy because I don't know if I believe in it, but fully. But this was like, when you see stuff like this where it's just it was a bucket of water to the face to a lot of things that like I think many people just kind of don't really want to think about in our history the further away we get from it. But also just the way it was also filmed and presented, I thought that Underground Railroad was really, really good and is top of my list. But Yellow Jackets also is up there. If you haven't seen Yellow Jackets on Showtime, I highly recommend checking out. I know I've talked about that before on here. I thought Squid Game was overrated. I do. I can't, guys. That to me, the translation just it literally does not do it for me. I thought it was okay, but I could see everything coming a mile away. Why the Last Man was a very big disappointment this year, even though at the last episode it showed signs of promise, and I don't know if that show will show up anywhere, but I'm almost hoping that it doesn't. So that somebody else someday can do it better. But does anybody else do you guys have anything that you'd like to tout or say that you've really enjoyed this year that we haven't talked about or you haven't talked about on your channels?
Well, I just wanted to mention was the Underground Railroad. My parents started watching it and they hated it and they turned it off. But so, which is why I haven't watched it. But my parents' taste in television is questionable at best. So maybe
it's a rough
check
watch.
it out.
Yeah, well, our mom liked the show that I ended up naming as the worst show of 2021. And she liked it. So I wouldn't go by what their tastes were.
Yeah,
which by the way
and she's obsessed with the show Outlander, which I hate. So
yeah, so I don't know. I think you should probably go with Rob's recommendation.
Yeah, I think I would. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a hard watch, but it's got some incredible performances. It's heartbreaking. It's kind of like the Odyssey a little bit in a way to me. It's like a fable. It's got levels of like of unrealness of a world that does not exist, but like it talks about how the different southern states are almost like their own territories, and it's really, really good. It challenged me more than anything this year, and that's why it takes the top spot, because I put more work into thinking and talking about that series than anything else this year, and I almost forgot about it because of how crazy the last few years have been and all the different things that we've all talked about. And I was just like, I felt like it was like in 2020 that this happened because of how much goes on in these days. But I had to bring it up. And yeah, if you have not checked it out, do make a point to at least give the Underground Railroad a chance. Because at the time I reviewed it, I said it should win everything. I thought it should win everything.
So what is it on? What streaming service is it on? It's on Prime. Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I don't know. Maybe if I watch it again, I'd feel differently. But right now, that's what I liked most. I could go on and on and on and on more about other topics, but I will let these kind people who joined me go along with the rest of you. I do feel really good about this. I'm really happy that we were able to do this and get at least almost all of us here. Don, I miss you, man. Hopefully when you come up for air, you can tell me why you didn't make it here, or you just didn't want to answer the Marvel question.
Are we gonna talk about some of the shows we liked this year? Because you asked us earlier.
If you want,
I will probably just.
I saw some of the chat messages from.
Yeah.
So I just.
I will probably let Mark do his. Oh, I'm sorry. I keep talking.
No, it's all right. I just didn't want to put you guys out any further because I know.
Oh yeah.
Go ahead.
I do want to get going very soon, so I'll let Mark do his, and then I'll just plug my channel where you can find. There really isn't anything I didn't talk about on my channel, so I'll just plug my channel.
Well, no, I just want to go real briefly and say pretty much, all of my favorite shows last year were all stuff that we've covered, like Marvel shows, The Expanse, Wheel of Time, Star Trek stuff like that. The only show I would mention was the show Hannah. I don't know, Rob, if you ever watched that. That's on Amazon Prime. That ended this past year with this final season, which was kind of a dud. It was kind of an okay season, but it was kind of I wish it would have been better because the show was so good for its first two seasons, and the season, while not sucking, was kind of a disappointment. But the movie I was going to say was Judas and the Black Messiah, which came out earlier last year, which was an amazing movie. It really blew me away. So if you haven't seen that, I would definitely check that one out. But that's pretty much all I had to say about that.
No, Judas and the Black Messiah. It's like it was almost a year ago now that came out, and that was really good. That was. Really
I always forget the actor name.
So Alyssa,
wait, hold on. What's
Daniel
Kaluuya?
Daniel Kaluuya.
Oh. There's Daniel Kaluuya and Keith Stanfield.
Daniel Kaluuya is the one that was thinking of. Yeah, he's amazing.
But Alyssa, I guess, why don't you tell everybody where we can find you so we can sub to your channel?
Yeah, please check me out on Alyssa Jean's reviews. I am dropping new videos every Friday. And once Star Trek Discovery starts up again next week, also every Thursday and every Friday, because my Discovery reviews will be on Thursdays. Other videos on Fridays. I will be releasing my full calendar for February 2022. I do a video where I tell you everything that I'm going to be doing in the month. So that is going to be coming out in the next couple days. So you'll know everything that's happening every Friday on my channel. My most recent upload is my latest video in my Nostalgia Lane series of videos that I do every month, where I rewatch an old film from my childhood that I haven't seen in a while and kind of talk about what I think of it now. This month was The Goonies, and I really had not seen The Goonies in like forever and ever. So check that out, and as well, like cover Star Wars, Star Trek, the MCU, and a bunch of stuff like that. So yeah, please subscribe, and hope to see you all soon.
All right. And Mark, where can people find you?
So my channel is called Enchantment of Eternity, and at the moment I'm going to release a review of Star Trek, the original series, which I had just watched the entire season 1 of the original series, and god damn it, that was a slog to get through. But so, to be fair, season 1 was the best.
Wait till you get to season 3. Wait till you get to season 3.
I know.
God.
but that video will be coming out this Monday on my channel. And also, as I promised, I am now in the process of reviewing every episode of The Expanse. I'm going to rank every episode of The Expanse from my least favorite to my favorite, and that's coming in a couple weeks well. And of course, yeah, I'm not going to watch the whole episode. I'm just flipping through it to take notes. I've seen it enough. But anyway, I'm also reviewing Star Trek Prodigy. I think it has one more episode, then Discovery comes back, and I'll be covering that. And other random Star Trek and Star Wars, Clone Wars. I'll do season 6 next month. So yeah, check me out for that.
All right, awesome. Yes, definitely go to
check out my channel.
You must go to Alyssa Jean Reviews. And
you know, I have to say real quick, I just recently watched a video called William Shatner Critiques Impressions of Himself, and I couldn't tell if he was being serious or not, but he was a complete dick about everybody's impression. He was like, that's not me at all. And I'm like, but that's perfectly you. That's exactly you. And I couldn't tell if he was joking or if he was being serious, but he was like, no, I don't talk like that at all. I'm like, yes, you do. But anyways, yeah.
Now, Brandon, that's not my Bob Dylan impersonation. My Bob Dylan impersonation would be like more like, that's Bob Dylan. Yeah, that's better. Rob's got that.
Anyways, we can go now.
Yeah.
Well, so as far as I go, where you can find me, well, I'm still kind of doing a mental walkabout and trying to figure some things out in my life, and also learn some new things about the actual platform that I'm working on. As you can see, I'm trying new things with just the format and the way it looks on these videos with using StreamYard. StreamYard, pay me. But yeah, you're gonna see me eventually doing stuff. I mean, when Better Call Saul comes back and Handmaid's Tale comes back, and anything that I feel like talking about at the time, I'm taking it a little easy on myself because I need it. But it has nothing to do with the platform or anything like that. I just have to have some priorities that I have to make right now, and so things just haven't been gotten to, and I apologize to anybody who misses my content. It'll be coming soon. I just got to get myself where I need to be to do more of it. But this is a step in the right direction, having good people to talk to about stuff, and I really appreciate all of you coming here, because you didn't have to on a Saturday night. I don't know what everybody else was planning on doing. I was probably just going to dive back into Better Call Saul Season 3 and some Persona 5 Royal on Twitch. So this is definitely better than that, because I get to talk to actual people, which I think is something that I'm around people all day and I talk to almost no one. So this is a nice change of pace, and appreciate you guys being here, and I hope that you guys will come back at other times. And I'll, of course, if you guys, I just realized I'm about to insinuate myself onto your channels. Well, if you ever,
Yeah,
you know,
anytime.
like my
yeah.
schedule is weird,
Welcome
but right
anytime,
now,
Rob.
I basically have no excuse right now to not do other people's shows because it's not like I've just said I'm not doing shit. So if anybody's like, well, I've got no shit to do tonight, so I'm kind of just gonna stick with the no shit. But no, that's not true. I've even thought about picking up shifts at work at this point because I'm just not doing much. But that's where you can find me here or on one of my other channels, Smirking Reviews Classics or Smirking Reviews Comics, when we eventually get that up and going. I'm the little channel that thinks he's a big channel, I know. So anyway, again, I want to thank Alyssa and Spider Marc and D, the man who shall not be named because he left early, and Don, wherever you are in the cosmos, send me a message, Don, and let me know that you're okay wherever you are. So again, thanks everybody in the chat for being here. Thanks for my guests for being here. Thanks for the great conversation. That's why we're here. At least that's why I'm here. Community and connection. And I want to thank everybody again. So have a great night, everybody, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye.